I've coached a couple of children who are autistic as well, or diagnosed with autism through the coaching. I suppose firstly you need to understand the symptoms of ADHD, and each child is different, and so there'll be different things that they can cope with. My grandson has ADHD. That's where I got to learn that it was a thing. I didn't know, I had never heard about it before, and he was 7 when he was diagnosed. He's still only very young now. He's only just 9 now, so it's only been a few years. And he came to some of the workshops with me. So he has ADHD. He also has dyspraxia, which is kind of your motor control. So getting dressed is difficult for him, tying his shoelaces, that type of things, where you're using even sometimes his ability to stand straight. Sometimes he bumps into things. So the ADHD, he is hyperactive. He always was, but now we understand why. He's easily distracted. He is very, very sensitive. And so working with him and working with those with ADHD, and again, it depends on the individual, but it's about making sure that they are constantly engaged. So an example would be, and in one of the workshops I did, there were 4 of them, 4 children. He was the youngest. And to start with, he sits in his chair and he's okay, and he'll listen to the story. But then I'll have to bring him into the story to make sure that I'm calling his name, so he knows that I'm focusing on him, so he's getting some attention. After a while, he can't sit till he has to get up. So I'll get him to come and stand with me, and he'll be my helper. These were when we were doing the in-person. So he'd come and he'd be my helper. He might hold my Wyatt doll, or if I'm on the whiteboard, or I've got the whiteboard up, he'll do some writing on the whiteboard. He'll become my helper. So I have to make sure that he is kept engaged totally. I also was coaching a young boy online, and there were times when I could only see the top of his head, because he would be lying down and I could just see the top of his head in the screen. And to begin with, I was still quite early days, and I was still learning about the conditions and the different aspects to it, and I used to think that maybe he's not listening, but he heard everything. He was listening to me. But with autistic children, sometimes they don't like the eye contact, and looking down, it made him feel more comfortable. And so I would just go with the flow with what he needed, but I would constantly ask questions to make sure they were engaged, ask what they thought. We've now got the bingo, which is great, so that you can give them a bingo sheet, so they're listening to the story and they're looking for the words. But the key thing, I think, that I've found with working with ADHD is keeping them engaged, using their name, being sensitive to what they need. If a child is hyperactive, keeping them sitting for too long isn't going to work necessarily. I keep my coaching sessions online are about 45 minutes. And if I can do something where they're getting up, then I'll get them to do that. It may just even be just a breathing exercise, maybe a stretching in between. But as long as you're keeping them constantly engaged in the conversation, I use my hearts. I was looking at my board, because I've got on top of my board of hearts, and I've told you that my grandson likes to collect the hearts for the respect. And so if he starts to play up a little bit, I'll point heart and say, does that heart need to move down? Does it need to move down some? Am I taking that away? And he's like, no, and he'll sit up again. So it's finding something that's going to keep him engaged online, which is obviously more challenging.